Chapter 4 brings us the Bronx Zoo, the Bronx, New York, Thursday, 16th of November 2006. Claire Hemsworth brushed the bits of grass off the Wildlife Conservation Society logo on her blue shirt. As she headed out into the pavilion in front of the Wild Asia ride, the crowds were a bit sparse in November, but visitors to the Bronx Zoo still wanted to go wild on Asia. Claire remembered her mother talking about how thrilling Wild Asia was back when it first opened in the late 70s. For her part, she couldn't imagine why anybody would make such a fuss. The monorail was so retro, and it wasn't as if it was that big a deal to see animals wandering around free. Of course, back in the Stone Age, meant when Mom was a kid, she guessed it was a big deal not to see animals in cages, but there wasn't any novelty to it now. The monorail was a cheesy piece of plastic that Claire was convinced was gonna fall off the rail any day now. Then again, she was in a bad mood generally, ever since what happened with those two kids. She'd been talking to reporters, to police, and to lawyers representing Fordham University, and she was really sick of it. The lawyers were the worst. Okay, cops and reporters were doing their jobs, but why should she have to listen to crap from Fordham's legal eagles just because the two kids who died happened to be their students? They weren't even killed on campus. Excuse me, Miss Hemsworth. Claire closed her eyes and let out a breath. She had had about 50 conversations that started with those 4 words this past week, and they were always like having root canal, only without the anesthetic. If it wasn't someone from law enforcement or from the WCS, she was going to tell them to screw off so fast. She turned and saw the hottest man she'd ever seen in her life. There was another guy with him, but Claire didn't pay much attention to him. She was focused on this one guy. He had such amazing brown eyes, and if he was the one who'd called her name, the sexiest voice she'd ever heard right there and then, she decided that she would do whatever this guy asked. He was tall, too, but not intimidating the way some tall guys were. His semi-shaggy dark hair was combed neatly, and he had an adorable small nose. Oh yeah, I'm Miss Hemsworth. Oh, Claire. The other shorter one said, "Nice to meet you. Claire, my name's John Mayo, and my friend here is Bernie Watson. We're with National Geographic." Claire blinked and tore her eyes away from Bernie Watson. What a wonderful name. To look at the shorter one with the close cropped hair, blue eyes, and mouth that looked like it was in a permanent smirk. John, was it? Okay. Then the text message she'd gotten from Frida, her boss, came back to her. Right, Frida said, "You guys be talking to me. What do you need?" doing a story on the orangutan that killed those two students, and we were told you were the one who cared for them. Bernie added, "If it's too much trouble, oh no," she said quickly, not wanting Bernie to go away, but also still not entirely clear as to why Angie would be doing this kind of story. Frida's text had said they were cleared by the press office as long as they stuck with the questions in the memo that had gone around on Monday, but Claire was confused as to why they bothered in the first place. This isn't really, I don't know, typical of you guys, is it? John grinned. Hey, we can't have all our stories be naked pictures of pygmies. Rolling her eyes, Claire ignored John and looked up at Bernie's tall form and soulful eyes. So, what is it you guys want to know? I mean, I've already told the story like 1,000 times. You can probably get whatever you want from the newspapers. They're being very sensationalistic. Bernie said, "We're trying to print the truth and make it clear that this wasn't the orangutan's fault." Oh, it wasn't Dean's fault at all. The short one suddenly developed a coughing fit, then said, "Dean, that was the orangutan's name." "Well, that's what I called them. We got two on loan from Philadelphia for a while, and I named them Hank and Dean, after the Venture brothers." Looking at John, Bernie said, "Actually, I think Dean's a great name for a big ape, don't you?" "Not really," John said in a low voice, and Claire started wondering what was going on. But then John looked back at her. "So, Claire, can you tell us in your own words what happened?" "Yeah, okay." She was feeling a little exposed, so she led the two reporters to one of the wooden tables near a food stand, taking a deep breath and trying not to get lost in Bernie's eyes. She went through the whole story. How Dean suddenly went crazy and started jumping up and down before retreating under a rock. Nobody saw him for a while after that. We don't really keep an eye on them 24/7, And then when I went to feed him and Hank, I couldn't find him. Now you gotta understand, both these guys never missed a feeding like ever. She'd found her eyes misting up and she wiped them with the cuff of the sleeve of her blue shirt. John said, "You must care about Hank and Dean very much. That's really admirable. I've always been impressed with the work people like you." "Thanks," she said quickly, then looked at Bernie. "So I knew something was wrong, and we instituted a search. Animals wander off sometimes, and Dean had been acting a little weird. But we usually have really good security, but we didn't find anything." Good security was an understatement. Alan and Jimmy had lost their jobs thanks to Dean's escape. Bernie leaned forward while John suddenly got up. "The paper said that the NYPD animal control took Dean in." Claire nodded. "They called us first since we're the only people in the city who have orangutans. Our animals have transponders, so we can verify who they are. So they sent me to animal control." She shuddered at the memory. God, what an awful place. These animals stuck in tiny metal cages and treated like crap. I mean, I know most of them are involved in crimes and stuff, but God. A napkin appeared in front of her face. She looked up to see John with a look of what she guessed was concern on his face. Thanks, she said as she took the napkin and wiped the tears away. She even almost smiled. John was trying way too hard. He sat back down next to Bernie, across from her. So you checked the transponder? Well, yeah, but I didn't really need to, you know. I know, my dear. She wiped new tears with the napkin. The poor little guy was scared to death. They did blood test on him, and he was hopped up on amphetamines of some kind. Can you believe that? Who would do that? John asked. Well, somebody who wanted to kill those two kids. God, what kind of idiot was this John guy? So it wasn't Dean's fault, Bernie said, sounding relieved. Claire shook her head, and we were so afraid that we'd lose him. Sometimes the families of victims insist that the animals be euthanized, and judges usually come down on their side. Really, Bernie said, that's awful. At this point, she couldn't work up much outrage. It's typical. They're part of this world, too. But try to get most humans to acknowledge that. In fact, I'm going to law school part-time, so I can make the laws about this kind of thing tougher. Good for you, Bernie said. I actually almost went to law school. Really? Why'd you give it up? Bernie hesitated. Weird family stuff, he said. Quietly, somehow, I'm really happy with what I'm doing right now. Believe me. Well, good for you. Still, you should think about it. So many lawyers these days are just in it to represent corporations and make big money. We need more people who care about the world. You know, where were you gonna go? Stanford. That's where I did my undergrad work. Claire whistled appreciatively. I'm at NYU. I wish I had more time for class, but it's expensive, and I work a lot of hours here. Jonathan said, I'm sure you'll get through it. Fine, you seem determined. I am, yeah, Claire said quickly to John. Then looked back at Bernie. All that and brains too. If he made it through Stanford, then John said, you said families of the victims usually ask for the animals to be euthanized. John pronounced the word as if he'd never used it in a conversation before, which struck Claire as odd, but they didn't ask for that this time. She'd been hoping to quiz Bernie more on his law school aspirations, but John seemed determined to actually do the job, which Claire supposed she could understand. No, Dean looked out. Was it her imagination, or did John wince every time she referred to the ring tent by name? Both the kids were members of WCS, and their families were sympathetic. Once the blood test proved that Dean was drugged, they didn't insist, and the cops were in a good mood that day. So they let us have him back. She shook her head. I remember one time in Minnesota, maybe a meerkat bit a kid who was too stupid to actually pay attention to the sign that said not to stick your hand over the fence. The family refused to give the kid a rabies test, so the zoo had to euthanize the entire family of Americans. Sounds to me, John said, like the wrong family got put down. Claire nodded, conceding to the point to John, then turning back to lose herself in Brandy's eyes. So, Dean's back with us, but we won't put him back out in the habitat yet. Why? You kidding me? He's like totally traumatized. I just came back from feeding him and he wouldn't eat until I left. He won't go near Hank and he won't let me hold him. John's mouth fell open. You hold him? Claire couldn't believe he'd even asked that. Of course, but now when I try, he hisses. Bernie bit part of his lower lip for a second, which Claire thought was adorable. Claire, can I ask you a favor? Of course, she said without hesitation. Then added with what she hoped was a coquettish smile. You can ask. Can we see Dean? That wasn't what she'd been hoping for, especially since it meant she would have to disappoint him. I'm sorry, but I so totally can't right now. They're just letting me in there. John leaned forward. Well, if you say it's okay, it's not up to me. They only let me in because I'm their handler, and we may wind up sending them back both to Philadelphia. Because of this, I'm sorry, but I'll get in a huge amount of trouble and then they won't even let me see them anymore. Bernie was cute, but he wasn't that cute. Hank and Dean were boys, and she wasn't letting anything jeopardize her relationship with them. Not even Bernie. They asked a few more random questions, and then they got up, which surprised and disappointed her. Well, Bernie said, thanks for your help. If you think of anything else to share with us, give us a call. Give me a call, okay? He reached into his pocket and pulled out a ratty piece of paper. I'm sorry, we're out of business cards. We ordered them like 3 weeks ago, and I still nothing. All of a sudden, alarm bells were going off in Claire's head. Why weren't they asking more questions? And they hadn't been taking notes or anything. Still, she took his phone number. She wasn't a complete fool. Maybe she could talk to him without his partner and his ruling. John shook her hand for a little too long and said, it was a real pleasure meeting you, Claire. I hope Dean gets better. Thanks. She broke the handshake before John did, and then watched them both walk toward the staircase. That would take them up to other parts of the zoo, or to one of 2 exits. And that was it. Frowning, Claire stared at the number, which had a 650 area code. She was pretty sure that entry was located in Washington, D.C., and their area code was 202. She was also pretty sure that 650 was in California somewhere. Of course, that could have been Stanford's area code, in which case Bernie would have had it from when he went there. But why wouldn't he have changed it to DC when he moved there after leaving Stanford? And why didn't they ask more questions about Dean or the drugs that were used to, or any of the other questions on Frida's list? She shook her head, what's up? Who were those guys you were talking to? The shorter one was hot. Gina again. You called Bill for me. I need to talk to him. Bill was the head of security, and the one who fired Jimmy and Alan. Much as she hated to admit it, she was pretty sure he needed to know about John Mile and Bernie Watson. That's the end of